channel. Bookdown #7.
Bruh.
A brilliant 2004 season left Ferrari with 6 F1 Constructor Championships in a row and Michael Schumacher with an all-time record of 7 driver championships. However, a change in regulations for 2005 would bring a totally different scenario into play. So, without further delay, let's start this week's History of Formula 1 video. One of the critical changes that heavily impacted the performance of so many cars was the outlawing of in-race tire changes. The tires now had to last the whole of qualifying and race sessions. This would Michelin runners an advantage compared to the Bridgestone ones. Furthermore, an engine now had to last 2 race weekends, and the technical aerodynamics regulations were changed in order to improve competition. The season would prove to be the final one for the 3-liter V10 engines. Sporting wise, there are also some new rules. If a driver stalled on the grid, there would be another warm-up lap. When there happened to be a red flag, the timekeeping system would not stop. Instead, all drivers would stop on the start-finish straight, and the restart would occur under a safety car. Also, under the safety car could now use the pit lane if necessary. However, the biggest sporting regulation change was the new qualifying format, with grid position determined by 2 aggregate times from 2 sessions, Saturday afternoon and Sunday morning, with the cars being refueled for the race before the second session. Ferrari retained Michael Schumacher and Rubens Barrichello in hopes of another record-breaking season. The surprisingly good BAR Honda outfit also retained Jensen Button and Takuma Sato. Renault went for Giancarlo Fisichella as a good match for Fernando Alonso. Williams got an all-new lineup of Mark Webber and Nick Heidfeld. McLaren were hoping for a much better first half of the season, the British team choosing Juan Pablo Montoya to partner Kimi Raikkonen. Sauber had Jacques Villeneuve alongside Felipe Massa. The team that replaced Jaguar, Red Bull Racing, yes, the energy drink company, signed David Coulthard and Christian Klein, with Antonio Luizzi also promised some races that season. Toyota got hold of Ralf Schumacher and Jarno Trulli. Jordan had Thiago Monteiro and Narain Karthikeyan as their lineup. Finally, the falling even further into last place, Minardi team signed Patrick Freisacher and Christian Albers for the new season. The now longest calendar in F1 history, including the new Turkish Grand Prix. Otherwise, the Brazilian Grand Prix was moved back to September, with the Chinese Grand Prix taking the season finale stop. Montoya returned from injury but for the Spanish Grand Prix, where Raikkonen got a pole to win, with Alonso second and dominating the championship, and truly third ahead of teammate Ralph in fourth. Fisichella finished fifth, Webber sixth, and Montoya and Coulthard rounded up the points. Kimi then continued his brilliant run of form with another pole to win in Monaco, sharing the podium with the two Williams drivers of Heidfeld and Webber. Alonso finished fourth, his first non-podium finish of the season. Montoya, Ralph, Michael and Barrichello completed the points. This firmly put Kimi and the McLaren team in contention for both titles and announced that Renault was ready to battle. The European Grand Prix again took place at the Nürburgring, with BAR returning after their ban and Liuzzi in his last race before being replaced by Klien at Red Bull. Otherwise, there was a new qualifying system installed, with one session on Saturday running in reverse order of the previous Grand Prix classification. Also, the cars were to be in race trim. Heidfeld took pole, a surprise that didn't last long in the race, as Alonso charged up the field and beat the German to the win after race leader Raikkonen had a last lap tire blowout. Barrichello secured another Ferrari podium, with Coulthard, Michael, Fisichella, Montoya and Trulli all in the points. New tire changing rules were put in place after Kimi's slate crashed last time out before the Canadian Grand Prix. There, Button took a surprise pole, but after an eventful race where he, the Renault, and disqualified Montoya retired from podium contention or more, Raikkonen took a third Grand Prix win in 4 races, with Michael leading a Ferrari 2-3. Massa, Weber, Ralph, Coulthard, and Killian all also got points. After yet another crash in practice for the US Grand Prix, Ralf Schumacher restarted the conflict between Michelin and the FIA regarding the tire's durability in the final bank turn of the Indianapolis circuit, which escalated very quickly. Some proposed a chicane to be added in place of that turn, but the conflict was still ongoing by the time Trulli took a surprise pole position for Toyota. It would turn out to be a disaster for Formula One as all Michelin runners withdrew at the end of the formation lap, leaving just Ferrari, Jordan, and Minardi to start the race. It was the absolute last scenario that F1 promoters needed, as most fans are fuming about the decision. Instead, we got a race that didn't really make any sense as to why it was still going on. Michael Schumacher took his only victory in 2005 so far, just about beating Barrichello to the win. Monteiro got his first points in F1 and became the first Portuguese driver to get an F1 podium with third place. Kartikeyan took fourth and the first points for an Indian driver in Formula 1, whilst Albers and Freisacher finished 5th and 6th and also got their first points in Formula 1. This left Ferrari with the constructors' title chance, as no other top 5 team had scored points. The following weekend at Manicure, things returned to normal, and Alonso got yet another pole to win, further ascending to the top of the Drivers' Championship. Raikkonen beat Michael to second, the two the only ones not to be lapped by the dominant Renault. Button finally put points on the board with 4 BAR with 4th, with every team now having points this season. Trulli, Fisichella, Ralph, and Villeneuve also got points. It was Alonso again on pole in Britain, but Montoya came through in the race to win for the first time with McLaren as he beat the Spaniard and teammate Raikkonen to the win. Fisichella, Button, Michael, Barrichello, and Ralph also scored some valuable points. Though Alonso had a good margin of 26 points in the driver standings, Renault were not safe yet. They only led the constructors by 15 points from McLaren, with Ferrari falling out of the title fight quickly. Raikkonen took pole in Germany, but a hydraulics failure in the race allowed Alonso to take the win and to extend his driver's lead to 36 points. Montoya and Button completed the podium, with Fisichella 4th, Michael 5th, Ralph 6th, Coulthard 7th, and Massa 8th. The end of tobacco advertisement came with the Hungarian Grand Prix, where, even though Michael took pole, he couldn't hold back a charging Raikkonen, who, after Alonso finished a disappointing 11th, cut the title lead down to just 26 points. Ralph also got a podium for Toyota ahead of Trulli, Button, Heidfeld, Weber, and Sato, fellow point scorers. Up next came the inaugural Turkish Grand Prix. Raikkonen took pole and held on to win yet again. Championship leader Alonso was second, limiting the damage done by Kimi's win to his championship lead, with Montoya third, Fisichella fourth, Button fifth, Trulli sixth, and Coulthard and Killian seventh and eighth, respectively. A sick Nick Heidfeld was replaced by Antonio Pizzoni at Williams for the Italian Grand Prix onwards. There, Raikkonen would continue his pole streak, only for him to receive an engine change penalty and start 11th. Instead, teammate Montoya led every lap on his way to a brilliant victory ahead of the two Renaults of Alonso and Fisichella. Raikkonen recovered back to fourth, putting McLaren only 8 points behind Renault in the title fight. Trulli led the Toyota 5-6, while Pizzoni and Button rounded up the points. Montoya would then beat his teammates to pole in Belgium. However, a collision would bring him out of it, and Raikkonen would win yet again. Alonso finished second, meaning he could wrap up the title in the next round, whereas Button got the final podium spot. Weber, Barrichello and Villeneuve competed top 6 and Ralph and Montero finished in the points. McLaren therefore closed the gap to Renault down to 6 points. Alonso took pole position in Brazil and, despite finishing only third, wrapped up the title and became the first ever Spaniard to do so. Montoya led the McLaren 1-2 to put them 2 points ahead in the constructors' title battle as Fisichella finished 5th. Michael got 4th, Barrichello 6th, Button 7th and Ralph 8th. Ralf Schumacher took a surprise pole position in the penultimate round in Japan, but it would be Raikkonen climbing up the field from 17th on the grid to pass Fisichella on the last lap for the win, an absolute masterclass of a victory. Alonso himself had a very good recovery drive from 16th on the grid to 3rd, whilst Ralf only finished 8th, ending Toyota's hopes of catching Ferrari for 3rd in the constructors. Webber, Button, Coulthard and Michael also scored points. Renault thus retook the constructors' lead by 2 points coming into the final race of the season. Michael Schumacher crashed into Albers before the start of the final race in China and then spun off during it, marking a difficult end to a horrible campaign from the previously dominant German driver. Renault secured the front row lockout, and even though Fisichella finished only 4th, Alonso's win was enough to crown Renault Constructors champions. Raikkonen beat Ralph to second place, with Kilian 5th, Massa 6th, Webber 7th, and Button 8th. All in all, it was a great season, the one with the most pole sitters in F1 history, a record that remains as of when I'm publishing this video. And so, moving into 2006, some rule changes included the reduction of the maximum engine displacement to 2.4-liter V8s, the fuel tank capacity mandated at 150 liters, and most importantly, tire changes were unbanned and the mandatory 7-speed plus 1 reverse semi-automatic gearbox was introduced. Sporting wise, the modern eliminatory Q1, Q2, and Q3 qualifying system was introduced for the first time this season. Renault kept Alonso and Fisichella, and so did McLaren, keeping their two 2005 drivers, Raikkonen and Montoya. Ferrari decided to bring former test driver Felipe Massa to partner Schumacher. Toyota stayed with the other Schumacher and Trulli. Williams partnered Weber with rookie Nico Rosberg. BAR was fully bought by Honda and so became their works team. They retained Button and brought in Barrichello to partner him. Red Bull retained Kilian and Coulthard, whereas Sauber became BMW Sauber, and after the German team brought Bodem, they retained Villeneuve and brought in Heidfeld. Jordan became Midland with new owners and so kept Montero and signed Albers. Minardi was bought by Red Bull and so turned into Toro Rosso, their B team, with Liucci signed to partner Scott Speed. Finally, a new Japanese team entered the grid. Super Aguri Honda kind of became Honda's second team, filling in an all Japanese lineup of Sato and Yuji Ide. To avoid the clash with the Commonwealth Games, the Australian Grand Prix was moved to the third round, promoting the Bahrain Grand Prix to the season opener. Brazil also returned to the season finale spot, with China now the third to last race. The only other change was the disappearance of the Belgian Grand Prix, a Spa was undergoing construction. Michael Schumacher took pole for the first round in Bahrain, and Ferrari signaled they were back with a front row lockout. Of course, Renault was still there, and just like Imola the year before, Alonso just beat Michael to the win. Raikkonen completed the podium, though the McLaren car was not as strong as at the end of the previous season. Button beat the Montoya to 4th, Webber led the Williams 6-7, in which Rosberg got points on debut, and Kilian completed the points, beating Massa to 8th place. It also marked the first time that teams had V8 engines in their car since 1996. Fisichella then dominated the Malaysian Grand Prix weekend with a pole to win, leading a fair Renault 1-2. Button completed the podium, whereas Montoya was 4th, Massa 5th, Michael 6th, Villeneuve 7th, and Ralph 8th. Button took a surprise pole position in Australia, however, he would fail to maintain the lead and eventually not score any points after his engine blew 10 meters before the finish line. Instead, Alonso took yet another win for Renault, just beating Raikkonen. Ralph got a podium for Toyota, whilst Heidfeld, Fisichella, Villeneuve, Barrichello, and Coulthard completed the points. At Imola, Michael took another pole position, then won the race to mark himself as a championship contender. Alonso took second place, while Montoya completed the podium. Massa took fourth, Raikkonen fifth, Webber sixth, Button seventh, and Fisichella eighth. After erratic driving in the previous races, Ide had his FIA super license revoked, which allowed Frank Montani to get back in Formula 1 for the struggling Super Aguri squad. At the Nürburgring, Alonso would take pole, but Michael would benefit from a good strategy and become the season's first consecutive race winner. Fernando would finish second ahead of Massa, whilst Raikkonen, Barrichello, Fisichella, Rosberg and Villeneuve also scored points. However, Alonso would take a brilliant home pole to win in Barcelona, with Michael second and Giancarlo joining them on the podium. Massa, Raikkonen, Button, Barrichello and Heidfeld also got some points. Though Michael took pole in Monaco, his actions of supposed deliberate blocking of Alonso's time lap demoted him to a P-lane start, helping the Spaniard take a pole to win. Montoya got second, whilst Coulthard, in the Superman Returns branded Red Bull, took their first podium with third place. Barrichello got fourth, Michael climbed back to fifth, and Fisichella, Heidfeld, and Ralph completed the points. Alonso took a third win in a row with a pole to win in Britain, with Michael and Kimi also on the podium. Fisichella got fourth to enlarge Renault's already massive lead in the constructors. Massa, Montoya, Heidfeld, and Villeneuve also finished in the points paying positions. Alonso was untroubled on his way to pole at the next round in Canada, but faced immense pressure from Michael during the race. However, he held on for a fourth consecutive victory. Raikkonen once again completed the podium, whereas Fisichella, Massa, Trulli, Heidfeld and Coulthard completed the points. It was an eventful US Grand Prix with an insane pile-up at the start, marking the one-year anniversary of the tire-related scandal. This time, Ferrari got a front row lockout and transformed it into a win, with Michael ending Fernando's winning streak. The Spaniard himself only finished 5th behind Trulli, who had an incredible race to go from the P-lane to 4th. Fisichella completed the podium and Barrichello, Coulthard and Liuzzi completed the points. Another front row lockout for Ferrari in France only translated into a 1-free in the race, with pole sitter Schumacher beating championship rival Alonso to the win. Ralph, Raikkonen, Fisichella all got points, as did Pedro de la Rosa, replacement at McLaren for the now NASCAR driver Montoya. Heidfeld completed the points. Second, Yamamoto replaced Montani and Super Aguri from the German Grand Prix onwards. There, Raikkonen achieved his first pole position of the season. However, a troublesome race left him third behind the Ferrari 1-2. Michael ahead with his third win in succession. Button, Alonso, Fisichella, Trulli, and Klian all also got some points. Ferrari left Schumacher only 11 points behind Alonso in the driver's title battle, whilst Renault led Ferrari in the constructors' title fight by just 10 points. Robert Kubica replaced an outgoing Villeneuve at BMW Sauber from the Hungarian Grand Prix onwards. There, Kimi managed the second pole in a row, but a mixed conditions race left an insane number of crashes and DNFs, including title contenders Alonso and Schumacher. Instead, through the storm came Button to take his first victory and Honda's first of their F1 comeback. De La Rosa managed second place ahead of Heidfeld, and after Kubica was disqualified for his car being underweight, Barrichello, Coulthard, Ralph, and Massa scored points alongside Michael, who, even after retiring with collision damage, was still classified 8th. The 200th race in the McLaren-Mercedes partnership, the Turkish Grand Prix, saw Massa take a dominant pole to win to get his first victory in Formula 1, with Alonso just beating Michael to second place. Button, De La Rosa, Fisichella, Ralph and Barrichello completed the points. With 4 rounds left, Alonso had gotten his championship lead up to 12 points, whereas Ferrari were only trailing Renault by 2 points in the Constructors' title fight. Raikkonen would take pole at Monza, but he was beaten by Michael to the win. Kubica got a podium in only his third F1 race, whilst Fisichella, Button, Barrichello, Trulli and Heidfeld also took points. Alonso retired with an engine failure, bringing his championship lead down to 2 points, whilst Ferrari took the constructors' lead by 3 points. After the race, however, Michael Schumacher announced his retirement at the end of the season, marking the end of a very successful partnership with Ferrari and hoping he would retire with another world title won. Raikkonen would then replace him with the Italian Scuderia for 2007. Kilian was replaced at Red Bull by Robert Dornbos at the Chinese Grand Prix, while Milan changed its name to Spiker. It was a rather dry and damp weekend, but that didn't stop Alonso from taking pole in a Renault front row lockout. However, Michael would climb up through the field and beat the Renaults of Alonso and Fisichella to the win. Button, De La Rosa, Barrichello, Heidfeld and Webber all scored points, despite the last lap incident between some of them. With that, Schumacher equalized his Spanish counterpart on points, but Massa's DNF meant Renault would retake the constructors' lead by 1 point. In Japan, Massa led the Ferrari front row lockout, maximizing their title chances. Schumacher took the lead in the race, but a dramatic engine blowout allowed Alonso to take the lead and to almost guarantee his second consecutive championship. Fisichella finished third to almost also guarantee Renault's constructors' title success. Massa struggled to second with Button, Raikkonen, Trulli, Ralph and Heidfeld also scored finishing in the points. Finally, in Brazil, Massa took a dominant home pole to win, but Alonso's second place guaranteed both titles for Renault, with Michael Schumacher recovering from 10th on the grid to 4th. Button took the final podium spot, whereas Raikkonen, Fisichella, Barrichello and De La Rosa completed the points. So Alonso became the youngest ever back-to-back champion just before leaving Renault for McLaren in 2007, with some luck, but at least Michael did go out with a brilliant race in Sao Paulo. Renault also secured the constructors by 5 points, the closest margin in a while. So, it was Alonso getting the 2005 and 2006 titles, each season bringing its own title fight. Until next time, like, subscribe, and goodbye.